Hello YouTube, Dave here again. I'm sure we've all had this question asked of us at one time or another, based off various different possible categories. But the question is, if you were trapped on like a deserted island and you could only take like X number of object, Y, with you, what would they be? And I've heard a lot of people talk about their top five like desert island or deserted island novels that they would take with them, or the top five video games they want to take with them, or the movies that they want to take with them if they had a device capable of watching them. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a like personal top five RPG books or products that I would want to have with me in the event that I was stranded on this deserted island. For everyone that's watching this, feel free to let me know, in the comments below what your top five or top three or whatever, number that you want to give, but what your, deserted island, stranded in the middle of nowhere, what, RPG books would you want to have with you? And I actually thought about this for a little while, and, at first I was thinking of, just sticking with a single like edition of like say Dungeons and Dragons and having the three core books and maybe like a supplement and an adventure book. And for that I was thinking for 5th edition I could do something like the three, the Player's Handbook, DMG, Monster Manual, and then probably like Xanathar's Guide to Everything, as well as like Tales from the Yawning Portal, which just had a collection of dungeon crawls and stuff to do. So those are sort of like, what I was thinking, but that's kind of, boring, I guess. And honestly, after a certain period of time, it might actually become just that, kind of boring, because you're stuck with like one system forever. So what I thought I would sort of look at is more variety in genre types, and trying to get products that were more or less like all-in-one type of thing, so that they would be largely self-contained. So without further ado, let's just get this map of the Isle of Dread out of the way. And let's just sort of go over my top 5 RPG books slash products, and you'll see why I make that distinction here in a moment, that I would want to have with me if I was trapped on a deserted island in the middle of nowhere. So the first one, and like I said, pretty much everything I'm going to show here is, like entirely self-contained in terms of it being like a player's book, a game master's book, and having like, monsters and stuff in it, with one exception. That's going to be the first one I'm going to show here, and that is going to be the Starfinder core rulebook. So this is something that if I was, trapped in the middle of nowhere and, needed something to pass the time, then absolutely have something like this with me. And the only thing that this book is really lacking are creatures, monsters and stuff for it to go up against. But that being said, honestly, it wouldn't be that difficult to just sort of make up your own, or make like NPCs based off of like the way that you make them for the player characters, and sort of have that be like the way that you go about making games. When I first started getting into role-playing, actually, I was running 2nd edition AD&D, and all I had was a player's handbook and a dungeon master's guide. I did not have the monstrous manual, so I do have some experience with not having a monster book and still running games. And I think 20 years later I can probably make much better encounters without having a dedicated monster book than I did way back then, which were terrible, admittedly, but I've gotten a little bit better since then. So this would be like the number 5 book, and this is like a science fantasy type of setting, so you have like space travel and things like that. And if you wanted to, you could even lean more towards just regular science fiction. Excuse me. By just removing some of the more fantastic elements, like taking out maybe something like the Technomancer. But again, there's a lot that you can do with just this one book. So this is why, if I were to be trapped in the middle of nowhere, thousands of miles or hundreds of miles away from civilization, I would be okay having this book with me. So that is number 5. Number 4 is going to be, and this one is again fully self-contained, is going to be the D20 version of the Call of Cthulhu. So this was put up by Wizards of the Coast in cooperation with Chaosium. And this is, one day I would love to do like a more coherent video on this, because it's been quite a while since I've actually looked through this. But this is just more of your, Eldritch Horror type of role-playing game. So you play like an investigator, and you're either set in like the 1920s or in the modern day. And the modern day, when this came out, was like 2001. So there are some options there, but again, this is sort of a completely different genre to try to play. If I was running Starfinder and we kind of, wrapped up a story there and didn't want to dive right back into another Starfinder game, then this would be, the way to go. So to have, again, a different type of game to play is the reason I would have this at number 4. And again, this one is pretty much fully self-contained. There's creatures, there's even a couple of small adventures in here, so there's some stuff to get you started right off the bat. So this would be my number 4 choice. Number 3, we have our first traditional fantasy, or I guess traditional might not be quite the right phrase, but this is the Dragon Age role-playing game core rulebook. So this is sort of like a dark fantasy, and let's just fix the camera a little bit here. So this is sort of a darker type of fantasy, but it has a really interesting world. The world of Thedas is something that I've always been really sort of interested in, and I really, really like the role-play mechanics here. And this might even be a great one to get people started when it comes to learning role-playing games, because it only uses 3 6-sided dice. So it's a dice type that basically everyone's familiar with, even if you've never played a role-playing game before in your life. So I think this would be a really great one to have, here as well. And again, just a really, really cool world. This has 3 adventures in it that are already ready to go. It's got your creatures, it's got your, magic items and rewards, everything you need as a player. So this is an all-in-one book. That's fantasy, but again, sort of a little bit darker. You have a lot more in terms of like the oppression of things like the mages. You have the religious persecution and the religious conflicts between like the Chantry and the mages. The Chantry in most of Thedas versus the Chantry in like Tevinter, which is a mageocracy type of place. You have the Canary, which has like their own religion that's very much at odds with the Chantry, which is kind of like Chantry's kind of like Christianity. Anyway, just really, really great book, and a very solid choice in my opinion for number 3. All right, number 2 is actually going to be a box set, and so far we have science fantasy, we have horror, then we have sort of a dark fantasy. Things might get a little depressing after a while, so I would kind of want something that would be lighthearted and something that would just be kind of fun and just silly and just enjoyable for everybody. And for that, I would choose the 4th edition era of Gamma World role-playing game. So this came out after 4th edition D&D had been released. And so this is sort of this is again another all-in-one system. It's a shorter type of role-playing game. It only goes from levels 1 through 10, but it's got a really cool character creation system where there's some randomness to it. You've got like randomness in terms of mutations that you can gain, which come in the form of like a deck of cards, as well as like technology and stuff that you can find. There is an adventure included. There's tokens and poster maps for the adventure as well. So this is probably another decent one to potentially get people interested in when it comes to getting into RPGs in the first place. And this is again sort of a humorous, more self-aware, just kind of a fun RPG. And I would absolutely love an opportunity to get to play it. So again, if I was trapped on a deserted island, then this is something that I would definitely want to have with me, because there's only so many elder gods and corpse fleets and persecutions just because you know have the ability to cast magic that you can really handle before you need something lighthearted to break it up. So this would be my number 2 choice. Alright, so for number 1, this probably isn't going to be a huge surprise, but so far we have Starfinder, Cthulhu, Dragon Age, and Gamma World, and they're not, well, with the exception of Starfinder, they're not necessarily RPGs that I've talked a whole lot about. So where is the D&D? Where's the Dungeons and Dragons? So my number 1 choice, and if this was the only book that I had with me in my backpack while I was traveling and stranded on this island, I would be totally okay with it, because that is the D&D Rules Cyclopedia. So this is the basic, expert, companion, and master rule sets put out by Frank Menser. So it's like the Menser D&D, the BECMI minus the I. This is an all-in-one system as well, and it's a fantastic game. It's the only version that of D&D, with the exception of Zero Edition, that I haven't had a chance to run yet. I did get a chance to play it as a player and realized that elves never gain second level because of how much experience it took, but I really want to run this system at some point in the near future. I'm currently running a first edition AD&D game, mainly because one of the other players had the books as well and was interested in trying it, and I had a second player go out and buy copies of the core books as well. So that's why I'm running AD&D right now, but once I wrap that game up, I am gonna almost like immediately go into running a game using the Rules Cyclopedia. This is the print-on-demand version that I got from DM's Guild, which is the one that I would probably travel with. I did have a viewer send me a copy of like the original book, which was again incredible, and that's one that I would probably keep at home because I don't want anything happening to it. But this would be my number 1 choice for role-playing books or accessory, or like products, I guess you could say, that I would want to have with me if I were on like a deserted island, trapped in the middle of nowhere with just a ragtag group of survivors. So yeah, so there we go. So that was my top 5, but I'm interested to know what your guys' top 5 would be. So anyone who's watching this, what would be your top 5, top 3, top 2, top 10, whatever. Top 10 might be a little bit too much, because how many books are you realistically going to be carrying with you? But I would love to know in the comments below what kind of books you would want to have with you if you were stranded on, you know, an island miles away from civilization, and this was the only things that you had with you to pass the time. So let me know. I can't wait to read those comments. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Take care.